Sir Richard Starkey, known professionally as Ringo Starr, is an English musician, songwriter, and actor who achieved international fame as the drummer for the Beatles. Starr occasionally sang lead vocals with the group, usually for one song on each album including Yellow Submarine and With a Little Help from My Friends. He also wrote and sang the Beatles songs Don't Pass Me By and Octopus's Garden, and is credited as a co-writer of 4 others. Starr's playing style, which emphasized feel over technical virtuosity, influenced many drummers to reconsider their playing from a compositional perspective. He also influenced various modern drumming techniques, such as the matched grip, tuning the drums lower and using muffling devices on tonal rings. In his opinion, his finest recorded performance was on the Beatles' Reign. In 1999, he was inducted into the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame. And this is tragic real-life story about Ringo Starr. Was raised in a rough neighborhood. The Beatles all famously hailed from Liverpool, one of England's largest cities and home to large populations of regular people in the working and middle classes. But while John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison all grew up in homes that weren't wealthy but secure, Starr's upbringing was a bit more economically unstable. He was not a barefoot ragged child, Starr's childhood neighbor Marie Maguire Crawford said in Bob Spitz' The Beatles. But like all of the families who lived in the Dingle, he was part of an ongoing struggle to survive. The Dingle was an especially depressed neighborhood, full of tiny, decrepit homes with poor ventilation where the only place for kids to play was in a local park, where all the coal smoke from area chimneys hung thick in the air. Those circumstances were made all the more trying by Starr's father abandoning the family when Ringo was only 3 years old. He was hospitalized for a year. Any serious medical emergency requiring a hospital stay of any length is concerning, but it seems worse when it happens to a child. And a major health calamity happened to Ringo Starr when he was just 6 years old. In 1947, his appendix ruptured, and it developed into an internal infection called peritonitis, an inflammation of the tissue membrane that covers organs. Starr's in-hospital recovery stretched on for months. He said, "I was in a year because 6 months in I was getting rather well, and I got excited and I fell out of bed, and ripped open all these stitches in my stomach. That required an emergency surgery, and then an additional 6 months of recovery time." Starr was laid up in a Liverpool Children's Hospital for so long that he missed a full year of school. When he got out, he caught up to his classmates with the aid of a tutor. He suffered from tuberculosis. Just a few years after he spent a year in a hospital and had to work his way back up to his peers in school, Starr got waylaid by health issues yet again, and this time it was for twice as long. At the age of 13, Starr was diagnosed with one of the most frightening and potentially deadly diseases on the planet at the time, tuberculosis, a bacteria-driven condition that attacks the lungs. Catching that infectious disease was a result of the area he lived in. It was like, 6 or 7 cases in every street where people were just in the living room, dying of TB because they didn't have a cure. Doctors sent Starr to a greenhouse in the country, a sanitarium for children, where he could breathe some decent air for a change, and receive treatments of a new miracle cure for TB called streptomycin. Starr spent around 2 years recovering from tuberculosis, and he missed so much school that he ultimately never returned. Beatlemania hit big. The group's performances on The Ed Sullivan Show set viewership records. 5 Beatles songs occupied the top 5 slots on the Billboard Hot 100, and the band embarked on a world tour to play live in front of throngs of fans who screamed so loud they couldn't even hear the music. But during a London photoshoot in June 1964, Starr once again fell seriously ill. Taken to a hospital, he was diagnosed with both tonsillitis and pharyngitis, a severely sore throat, and was ordered by doctors to not get out of bed. That was kind of a problem, as the Beatles' first major world tour kicked off in Denmark a day later. Starr had no choice but to literally lay back and let the band replace him with producer George Martin's first suggestion, a session drummer named Jimmie Nicol. Starr recovered after 10 days, missing tour stops in Australia and Asia, and joined the band. It was a relief for the drummer. Starr said, "They'd taken Jimmie Nicol, and I thought they didn't love me anymore. All that stuff went through my head." The others Beatles were rude to him. Throughout the history of the Beatles, there's a through line of disrespect for Ringo Starr. He was only allowed to sing lead on 11 songs and ride 2 unassisted, and he didn't even get to play on one of the group's earliest and biggest hits. Producer George Martin didn't like the drumming Starr turned in for Love Me Do, so he brought in a session drummer named Andy White to play drums on Love Me Do and the B-side P.S. I Love You, demoting Starr to tambourine and maracas on each song respectively. Toward the end of the 1960s, the band life of the Beatles was famously contentious. It got so bad in 1968 for Ringo Starr that he briefly left the band in the middle of recording the Beatles, also known as the White Album. While Starr took his family on a vacation to Sardinia, the other Beatles, apparently unfazed, recorded without him, taking bits and pieces of work he'd previously recorded, and some new drum work by Paul McCartney to cobble together the rhythmic backing track for Back in the USSR when Starr returned. His bandmates at least welcomed him back by covering his drum kit in flowers. He had a serious problem with alcohol. The breakup of the Beatles in 1970 left Starr feeling absolutely lost, as he told People, and stress over an unsteady solo career in the years after left him with a serious drinking problem that only intensified. It got progressively worse, and the blackouts got worse, and I didn't know where I'd been, what I'd done. He doesn't even remember some career highlights. I've got photographs of me playing all over the world, but I've absolutely no memory of it. I played Washington with the Beach Boys, or so they tell me. But there's only a photo to prove it. In 1989 he went to court to stop the release of an album he'd recorded during an especially booze-heavy period, testifying that he was drinking as many as 16 bottles of wine each day. Starr realized he had a problem in the early 80s, but he didn't seek help for years because he felt like he was stuck professionally. I don't know how you do anything if you're not drunk. I couldn't play sober, but I also couldn't play as a drunk. He credits forming his Ringo Starr's all-star band and going on a tour in 1989 as one of the main factors that helped him kick alcohol for good. Got so drunk his staff thought he killed his wife. Not only did addiction ensnare Ringo Starr, he says it also grabbed his second wife, Barbara Bach. He told, "She fell into the trap because of me." Starr added that Bach would try and straighten us out on occasion, but that they'd fall back into old habits. "We used to go on long plane journeys, rent huge villas, stock up the bars, hide and get deranged." As Bach's daughter Francesca Gregorini told the Mail on Sunday, when she lived with her mother and the former Beatles, it was their drugs heyday, and they were content to just stay at home, drink, do drugs, and just hide away. Such a lifestyle may have hit its nadir in late 1988. "I came to one Friday afternoon and was told by the staff that I'd trashed the house so badly they thought there had been burglars. And I'd trashed Barbara so badly they thought she was dead." In October 1988, Starr and Bach jointly checked into a rehab facility in Tucson, Arizona. His first wife died after a bout with leukemia. Ringo Starr met his first wife, the former Maureen Cox, at the Cavern Club, the venue where the Beatles cut their teeth. "Here I was, a silly 16-year-old hairdresser dating the most popular drummer in Liverpool," Cox told Le Chroniqueur in 1988. The pair wed in 1965, had 3 children together, and the marriage weathered the storm of worldwide fame and attention, but just barely and not for the long haul. Cox had a brief affair with Starr's Beatle cohort George Harrison, and after they grew apart in the mid-70s, Starr struck up a relationship with model Nancy Lee Andrews, with a divorce finalized in 1975. According to John Lennon's first wife Cynthia, Cox was so devastated that she attempted to take her own life by running a motorcycle into a wall. She survived, but she endured a lengthy cosmetic surgery to correct her facial injuries. Starr and Cox both remarried, he to actress Barbara Bach, she to Hard Rock Cafe founder Isaac Tigret, but they reportedly remained cordial. They stayed so friendly, in fact, that Starr was with his former wife when she passed away in December 1994. Admitted to the Fred Hutchinson Research Center in Seattle the previous October, Cox underwent a bone marrow transplant from her and Starr's son Zach Starkey that was intended to treat leukemia. Sadly, the procedure didn't completely improve her health, and she died from complications of the surgery at age 47.